Good evening, Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for joining Living Waters, Falling Deeper in Love with God's Word. I'm Lauren, one of your hosts.
And I'm Stephanie Pavlantos. Thanks for joining us
Thanks
tonight.
for joining.
Yes, this is pre-recorded.
Yep.
So I'm out of town for a little bit. And so we are pre-recording and hopefully, right? Hopefully,
yes,
we have to finish this book tonight.
That's right.
So 15 through 16,
yes,
parts of 15. And
I feel like we should have like noise and celebration or something because we've been doing this for a long time.
We have like 5.5 months, I think.
Okay, but I gotta say, this is one of my favorite books.
Yes, it's been very, very good and very, very helpful to learn this. I think to put Paul in the right perspective is so important.
Yep. And our church is going to start Romans actually this Sunday. So I think I'm going to have to quit and find a new church because I can't. I'm going to have to sit in service like this and shake my head. And my husband's going to put his hand on me and tell me to stop moving around. And you be still.
I know. I did the same thing. Where is he getting that?
Deep breaths and huffing. And he's like, will you just stop and be still? Be quiet. Okay, I'm going to
have to go to the bathroom.
And
then you have to be in the bathroom for a while.
That's right. I'm going to be in the bathroom.
But yeah, so the 24th, April 24th, we are going to start a new book, but we won't be starting it exactly that day, but we are having the author on as our guest. Mm-hmm. So you will want to watch that. He's a great guest. I had him on my podcast already. And he's a super, super nice guy. And I think he's going to be really fun.
Very good. So give the name of the title and his name. So if anybody wants to order it for you, it's on Amazon. That's where we both got ours, and it'll get there. It'll get
priestly garments.
Plenty of time.
Who we are in Messiah. So he goes through the garments of the priest to describe who we are and the significance of those garments in our life as believers. And his name is Jeff E. Brannon. So Brannon. So if you can't see that, maybe that
he's got a ton of books, lots of books, and a lot of them look really interesting
and nonfiction.
Yeah,
and he's a prolific writer. So he just like puts them out, boom, boom, boom.
I don't know how I'm writing a novel. I am writing a novel, but I've been writing it for 5 years because I can't sit down and make myself do it.
I think that man must just. I think he doesn't do anything but write when he's not like he's got a YouTube show and stuff like that he's very active on. And but I think he writes just like day and night. Like that's what awesome. He loves to do. So
that's good. That's good. All right, Stephanie, we're on a mission. Let's finish this.
Let's get going. Dive in.
If you have your Bible, turn to Romans chapter 15. And we're going to pick up. We read this verse and we just kind of talked about it a little bit, but there's some really cool stuff. So we didn't want to go over it too fast. But it's Romans 15.
We introduced it.
14 through 16. Yeah. So I'm going to read it again. This is Paul talking. Now I am convinced, my brothers, that you are full of goodness, filled with knowledge, and well able to counsel each other. But on some points I have written you quite boldly by way of reminding you about them, because of the grace God has given me to be a servant of the Messiah, Yeshua, for the Gentiles, with the priestly duties. The priestly duty of presenting the good news of God, so that the Gentiles may be an acceptable offering made holy by the Ruach HaKodesh.
So he's admitting, right? He's kind of admitting, I've been kind of hard on you. I've been kind of rough. Yeah. My words probably haven't made you very happy. But it's good stuff that he's been talking and teaching.
Mm-hmm. But he actually says, he mentions the priestly duty. And I think that's the number one thing. And don't forget, this has been like a consistent, this is something I'm going to have to put my hand over my mouth when they start talking about the church and how it's replaced Israel and all that garbage. Yeah. But the only reason Gentiles were allowed the grace of God is to make the Jews jealous so that the Jews will be saved.
Yeah. And I mean, and probably the only reason, But God, the gospel is for the whole world.
I don't want to say the whole only reason, but
Yeah. And I
that's
know
the
what you mean.
catalyst.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's a good word. That's a good
Yeah.
word. So it was a catalyst, and they were falling behind. They were getting kind of, arrogant in their ways and thinking that they were already there. They've arrived. They were already
Right.
good enough. And
Right.
God's like, no, you're
Right.
not. And so I'm going to let your hearts harden, and I'm even going to help those hearts harden even more than they have, so that I can offer my salvation to another group of people.
Right.
And I think it's good. And I think we mentioned this last week, but one of the things that he wrote in here that kind of stayed with me was, in this being the commentator,
Mhm.
or is that the right word? The author, sorry, of the commentary. And he wrote that it wasn't Paul following Yeshua that they had the problem with, the other Jews. The
Mhm.
reason his life was always in danger was because of that whole grafted in thing. It's
Mhm.
like, what? You can't bring those Gentiles in. They're not good enough. And
Right.
this is a problem we see in Galatians
Right.
and other books of the Bible. They're not good enough. To be a Jew,
Mhm.
they have to, or to be part of Judaism, they have to be circumcised. They have to be baptized, or mikvah.
Mhm.
And he's like, no, they don't.
Mhm.
Circumcision is only for, and this is something I learned from a rabbi, but circumcision is technically only for those who are related by blood and DNA to Abraham. And so circumcision wasn't for the Gentiles.
Right.
So it's not about the law. It's actually what he's not talking about in some of these books, and especially Galatians. He's not talking about the law. He is actually talking about just circumcision, because there was a belief that they had to become like them.
Mhm.
So
The
anyway,
Judaizers,
yeah,
and right.
yeah, and those were Pharisees, and yeah,
Mhm. Well, the reason I brought that up is because Paul makes a reference to, I've written to you quite boldly by reminding you about them, the Gentiles,
Mhm.
because by the grace of God has given me to be a servant of the Messiah for the Gentiles
Mhm.
with the priestly duty. So Paul is saying, I have this priestly duty.
Mhm.
We have the priestly duty of presenting the good news of God, so that the Gentiles might be an acceptable offering and made holy.
Mhm.
So again, it's kind of tying back to that same idea of,
Mhm.
God has extended this grace to the Gentiles, and we have to present this to the Gentiles because we're hoping that their relationship with God will spur the Jews to be jealous and to
Right.
save the Jews, to ultimately save the
Right.
Jews.
Yeah.
It's a priestly duty. So there's some cool stuff in here about
Mhm.
the priestly duties and,
Yeah.
and what Paul is talking about.
Yeah. So I have highlighted the bottom of 374.
Yep.
So what does Paul mean by this priestly duty?
Mhm.
And he says, here's the thing to understand. According to the Torah, it was one of the prime duties and great honors of the Levite priests to keep and teach God's word to God's chosen people.
That's right.
So what does that mean for us when Peter tells us that we're a royal priesthood? That's our job.
It's our job. That's right.
So
Sorry.
yeah.
I
So the
still have a
synagogue
cold.
was where, the synagogue was where most of the teaching happened now.
Mhm.
And they weren't.
So by Jesus's time and by Paul's time, the priests were no longer the primary.
Yeah.
And what came
They
to
were
mind is
rabbis.
Ezra. Think of the book of Ezra. Nehemiah. How he rebuilt the wall and he's doing all that. But then anytime the law was read or the book was read or anytime the scrolls were opened, it was always the priest Ezra
Yeah.
that was reading it for
Yeah.
them. So I
now
thought when I
rabbis.
read that and I read that commentary, that was the first example from the Old Testament that came to mind of how the
Yeah.
priests were responsible for reading the law and for
Right.
teaching.
And that's why Paul went into the synagogues every
Mhm.
Sabbath.
Mhm.
And that's even why even Jesus stood to read in the
Mhm.
synagogue. He stood to read the scriptures. Then he sat down to
Right.
teach them.
Right.
So there was a way that they did everything.
Mhm.
And that's why you see, then Jesus goes and sits down after he reads the scriptures, because
Right.
everybody stood while the scriptures were being read. And I
Mhm.
used to go to a church that did that.
I did too.
got
Yeah.
out of that habit.
Yeah. Anytime you read there, everybody would stand. So
Yeah.
I thought that's
Yeah.
old school. Look,
Yeah. It was when things were better. People
it's
weren't
when
so
things were reverent. Okay, so do we want to go on to 15? We're good, or 17, 19? Okay. Verse 17 through 19. In union with the Messiah Yeshua, then, I have reason to be proud of my service to God, for I will not dare speak of anything except what the Messiah has accomplished through me to bring the Gentiles to obedience by my words and deeds, through the power and signs and miracles, through the power of the Spirit of God, from Jerusalem all the way to I don't know how to say it, Illyricum.
Yeah,
I have
something like that.
fully proclaimed the good news of Messiah. I will say Illyricum, I think from what the thing is, Spain.
Yeah.
I think the
So that was
commentary.
a big different. That was a far distance to go.
Yeah. He
from
made a
Jerusalem.
comment, basically, that's the end of the earth.
Yeah, for
The end
them.
of the known world would have been Spain. Beyond that was an ocean. And so that would have been the end of the known world for Paul's time in understanding. So that just so you can make a
And
note
it was
of that
still part of
location.
the Roman Empire, though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because he says the notion that all of Paul's letters have survived,
Yeah.
or all of his writings are known to us,
Yeah.
cannot be taken seriously. So he's like, we can't possibly know if we have everything he wrote, and we can't possibly know if he wrote more than what we have.
Right. I think we mentioned that last time. And I can't remember if it's this chapter or the next chapter that he makes that point about, Paul's writings being known, but there's something within these next couple of words that if you read through that pretty carefully, it sounds like Paul's writing to a direct person or a question, or answering a direct question, so that we don't even know if this is the first letter to Rome. And obviously there was a relationship between him and somebody within this church, because that's kind of what they're writing to. So
we find that out in 16. So
I couldn't remember what chapter. It's kind of become a blur a little bit.
I know.
Okay.
And then in the other two, so did you have anything on 376 and 377? Because that's a lot of history.
Yeah, it was just a lot of history.
So, and there was some controversy over whether Paul wrote.
Yeah, it said Romans chapter 15 and 16 put up grave doubt some of the more common church doctrine, such as Paul not just converting to Christianity, but also leaving his Jewishness behind and essentially converting to become a Gentile. What better resolve this than this dispute than to simply declare 15 and 16 as invalid? So what she was talking about is there's different church traditions of Paul must not have written 15 and 16, or it was added later by, a different person. Yeah. And so the point that they're making is, well, if I say that Paul didn't write those things, then, then I can further my argument that Paul probably, converted to Christianity and left his Jewishness. And we'll see that especially in 16, because he refers to a lot of people as my brother and my kinsman and my family, so there's clear indication that he's relating to other Jews.
Yeah. So. And it was funny because we were talking about this last night when I went out to dinner with some friends, and the one said, who thinks Paul converted? And I go, there are
in
people.
The church.
I've been told that half my life.
Yeah.
Paul converted. Paul conversion, he went from this Saul to this Paul guy, this sinner, this terrible Jew, to this godly Christian man, Gentile. But he didn't, and neither did any of the, none of the disciples became Gentiles. They were very proud of their Jewish heritage, just like the Jews are today. They're very proud.
Gentile is just a fancy way of saying pagans.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't really think about that, but if you're not a Jew, like these people were Jewish, they they were the holy chosen people.
Yeah.
So when they're referring to Gentiles, it's not like it's a compliment,
Mhm. And
right? They're not.
Yeah.
So for Paul
Yeah.
to say, I think I'm going to give up my Jewishness and I'm just going to be a Gentile now.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
People interchange that word Christian for Gentile.
Yeah.
They think it's an interchangeable, word.
Right.
They don't understand. Like that's not necessarily a compliment.
Yeah. And they used to, and this guy ties in with Acts 10 and 11. If you read all of that, both chapters, you realize that the opinion they had of Gentiles were that of unclean animals, like a
Right.
dog. They were swine.
Right.
That's why he was given that sheet by Yeshua of all of the unclean animals. It's like, stop calling my people and comparing them to these unclean animals, because those Gentiles come into the kingdom.
That's right. That's right.
So,
one point I did want to say is he goes in and he talks about different people who have edited the book of Romans and added and subtracted. And he basically talks about Marcion, and he also talks a little bit about, I think, Origin. Okay. Whenever you guys see, because a lot of people bring up the church fathers canonized the gospels. You hear a lot about that. Like they love the church fathers. Go do some research. I used to really like Luther. I was a fan of Luther. So I found out how anti-Semitic he was, and now I'm like, I got to kind of take that with a grain of salt with what he's teaching. So he makes the same point. Marcion was considered a heretic because of what he said. And, he edited out anything Jewish in the New Testament. We have another, I think, and you'll have to go look this up. It's called the Thomas Jefferson version of the Bible.
Oh.
And Thomas Jefferson edited all the Jewish stuff out. It's a thing. It's a thing today. So again, if you hear of a church father or somebody's being honored, or that's part of the argument of why they think Paul is saying a certain thing, go do some research on those church fathers.
Yeah. Let me show you something.
Yeah.
I'm going to add this to the stage. Look at this.
Oh, there you go. Oh, look at that.
It's the guy we're having on next week. He actually wrote a whole book about the false prophets and false teachers of the New Testament. That's
another book I have to order.
James. Everyone was always, even this guy.
Yeah.
John talks about John or James. He actually mentions him in scripture that, and they were the false teachers that existed in this time and that were being warned of by the disciples, by Peter, by James, by Paul. So, he wrote this book.
Another book I have to order.
I know. I'm sorry. I keep piling on books.
That's okay.
But I thought while you're talking about it, I need to tell you, I need to bring that up.
It's okay. All right. That was it. Anything else in 76, 377 that you enjoyed?
No.
Okay. All right. Romans 15, 20 through 21. I have always made it my ambition to proclaim the good news where the Messiah was not yet known, so that I would not be building on someone else's foundation. Rather, as Tanakh puts it, those who have not been told about him will see, and those who have not heard will understand. I think this is where he talked about how Paul, clearly somebody else had been working with Rome, and how Paul, couldn't have. It's not that he's building on the foundation of somebody else. He acknowledges somebody else established the Roman Church.
And he said, that like you probably, this is what you're saying, but he made it clear he wanted to pioneer new areas.
Yeah.
So this was proof that Paul was not the only believing Jewish evangelist of the good news.
Yes.
And it shows that Paul was not the boss, so to speak, of all the believers. So he was an apostle appointed directly by Christ, and that Gentiles were to be his primary mission field. But it doesn't mean that he stopped sharing or stopped teaching his own people. So
Right. Just looking at my underlines and making sure there's anything else. I don't see anything else.
Nope.
No? Nope.
I have nothing else on there.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know
Um,
where does he quote? I don't have the quote.
he
there.
didn't say. He
Yeah.
didn't say where it was quoted from, but it is verse 20. No.
I would
He-
have to look it up in my my Bible.
Yeah. He gives us, because that in
Yeah.
verse 21, there's a quote from the Old Testament. So that's the one we're trying to find the reference to. Okay, 22, 23. This is also why I have so often been prevented from seeing you.
Yeah.
But now, since there's no longer a place in these regions that need me, and since I've wanted for many years to come to you. So this is kind of just building on what Stephanie just said. There was a Jewish community where he would usually be welcome. Paul didn't just wander around and go, hey, I think I'll go to this city. There was usually an established, Jewish synagogue or Jewish
group,
community. Yeah. And next he would convince some members of Jews and Gentiles that Yeshua was the Messiah. He would select a leader. He would help the leader set up an organization. He would establish some place for believers to meet all during this time, and he would instruct the leadership in proper doctrine. So usually the leadership would have been converted Jews.
Yeah.
He didn't just go in and say, hey, I'm just talking to the Gentiles here. He would start with the Jews.
But we do know from scripture that he would have conversations with even the Greeks. He would he would start these conversations with these different Gentiles where he traveled, because the Jews were scattered, and we have to remember the Jews were scattered in all these nations, and at least the northern tribes, the 10 lost tribes, so to speak. They're not really lost; they've just been scattered. So everywhere he went, if there was a synagogue there, then he went. And I mean, Acts actually chronicles that he would go to this synagogue wherever he went. If there was a synagogue, he went in and taught on the Sabbath, not Sunday.
That's right.
So then any Gentiles in the area, he would go and reach out to them.
Okay, I'm on page 380, so I don't want to skip over anything too fast.
We didn't read 15:24, did we?
I hope to see you as I pass on my way to Spain, and that's where we see that. And to have you help me travel there after I've enjoyed your company for a while.
So that just, he intends to go to Spain. But he says they kind of realized that by explaining that he was going, his goal is to go to Spain, that it was kind of, it required extra time on his part because it was kind of far. It was like we said earlier, it's a very far-reaching area for him and for his trips. So, but they would have understood, he's going a long way, and it's gonna, so he was explaining so they wouldn't understand why he wasn't there,
right? And not staying for a year. Or staying for a long time. He was just passing through. He was, hoping to stay and get comfort from from them. Okay, but now, because he's still talking about his traveling stuff, but now I'm going to Jerusalem with aid for God's people there. I thought this part was kind of interesting.
Yeah, but before you talk about that, I thought it was interesting here. He just says, so in a sense, by going to Spain, Paul would have been following Yeshua's instructions by evangelizing the West as representative of the ends of the earth. I thought that was kind of cool. He's taking it literally, and he's going all the way to what they considered almost like the ends of the earth.
Right.
So anyway,
it gives a perspective. It definitely gives a perspective. Okay. So then this next section where he's talked about, I'm going over to Jerusalem. I'm going to read, no, I don't want to get too far into it. He does talk about in 26 through 27, you know what? I'm going to read it and tie it in because it makes sense to go together.
Okay.
I'm on my way to Jerusalem for Macedonia and Achaia thought it would be good to make some contribution for the poor among God's people in Jerusalem. They were pleased to do it, but the fact that they owe it to them. For if the Gentiles have shared with the Jews in spiritual matters, then the Gentiles clearly have a duty to help the Jews in material matters. Yeah. So he starts talking about how generally certain, always we saw a bunch of times in Acts where churches and assemblies, I rather use the word assemblies, would make contributions to the growing church.
Yeah.
And it would be brought back to Jerusalem, or it would be because Jerusalem was like the hub, the headquarters.
Yeah.
And so he's talking to this church, and he's basically kind of like, hey, you know, we got this really good donation from the Gentiles. Are you guys going to match it? Or are you going to, you know, he's kind of like, are you going to help too? And
Right.
it's not that he was trying to guilt them, but he's, you know, definitely sharing, like, look how the Gentiles are really supporting Jerusalem. Can you do the same, basically? So
yeah, and he actually talks about it in Acts 24 and First Corinthians 16 about these charitable gifts, and how he talks about going back to Jerusalem and bringing that gift to his nation. And then in First Corinthians 16, he talks about collections being made for God's people.
Yes.
And so he talks about Galatia and directed the Galatians to do that as well.
Right.
So yeah, he was definitely, and I think that's where we probably get it today. We kind of model by going on missions trips, by collecting donations from people. I mean, I'm sure that's where we've taken Paul's advice and gone with it that way. So, but yeah, he was definitely bringing aid to his own people, like you mentioned, as well as because he feels like the Gentiles owe it to the Jews because they've been given a lot because of the Jews. So, and I think that is, you know, I talked to a woman yesterday from FFOZ. She's very, very sweet. And we had some different opinions about things. But it wasn't like, it was still a really, really good conversation. And we had a great time talking. And that was actually our second conversation. And, you know, it's just like the way that I understand and the way that they understand. And we talked about the Sabbath and why they keep these strict rules, and they feel like it distinguishes them. There's a reason they have these strict rules, and it goes back to creation, and God rested from his creation. So not to get into all that, but then they believe you do not create on the Sabbath. So in that regard, you're not knitting, you're not crocheting, you're not doing artwork, because creating is part of what God rested from on the Sabbath. So we should stop from creating. And it is very interesting. And I mean, and I understand exactly what she meant by that. And so anyway, but it was like, she was, you know, we were kind of just talking about the distinction between Jews and Gentiles. And there's a certain level of things that she doesn't think the Gentiles need to be bothered with or do because it was given to them. And I said, well, I don't agree 100% with that, because is God's standard of holiness, does it change if you're Jew or Gentile? Like, is there a standard for Jews and a different standard for Gentiles? I don't think there is. So we had interesting conversation, but it is very interesting when you talk to someone of the Jewish faith and that, you know, to get their perspective on things and what they think we're doing wrong and what they think we're doing right.
Don't be afraid to have those conversations. I think it's important.
Yeah,
I do. Definitely.
And she was very sweet, very easy to talk to.
Yeah.
And she would just say, you know, I don't agree with that, and this is why. And and then I would say, well, this is why I believe it, or this is why, you know. So anyway, but that was good, and I think it just ties in here because Paul feels the same way. Hey, he's not talking about a distinction, but he goes, hey, you Gentiles, you've benefited from what we've done. You've benefited from what the temple, from the Torah. You've benefited from our Messiah. You've benefited from all these things. So don't act like you haven't.
Don't hesitate to give and to support that others may know. I mean, I think that's the definite premise of evangelism, I guess would be a good way to say it. All right.
28, 29. Ooh,
yeah, I know. Look at us. Let me turn the page here. 28:29. So when I have finished this task and made certain that they have received this fruit, I will leave for Spain and visit you on the way there, and know that when I come to you, it will be with the full measure of Messiah's blessing.
So what does a full measure of Messiah's
Yeah.
blessing mean?
I thought that was a good little spot
Yeah.
there.
Do you want to read that at
Okay.
the bottom?
Well, I have, it says, Romans 15, many Bible commentators wish that wasn't there, because it has a direct connection to the Hebrew heritage of salvation, Messiah's blessing. Okay, what is the blessing that the Jews have? They have the Abraham covenant.
Kind of what I was starting to say. Yeah, earlier. Go ahead.
Yep. Oh, I would, if you want to, go for it.
No. I just mean, you're saying exactly what I was thinking earlier.
Yeah. So the blessing of the Jews is that, yes, we've received the Messiah, but we received also the blessing from Abraham that the seed will nations will receive this blessing, blessings and curses.
All children of Abraham.
All the children, they'll all be called. So we get, into your seed and this, this Messiah, obviously. So the blessing of Messiah is that he's extending that Abrahamic covenant, the blessings of that covenant.
Right. And everyone through him will be blessed.
Yes.
So we're blessed because of the promises to Abraham. So
right. I think that's the simplest way to say that, just what you said. He does give us a reference to Galatians 3.
Yeah,
13
I highlighted that.
Yeah. If there anything in there you want to talk about?
I think he quotes the Tanakh, but the bottom, I don't know if this is like it's chapter 3, Galatians 3, 13 through 16, but I'm going to start like in 15. It says, brothers, let me make an analogy from everyday life. When someone swears an oath, no one else can set it aside or add to it. So promises were made to Abraham and his seed. It doesn't say two seeds as if to many. On the contrary, it speaks of one, and to your seed, and this one is Messiah. So the promises to Abraham and to his seed. So the seed is Yeshua, and then we are blessed through that seed. So, but that seed comes from Abraham. So that's the main thing to remember. So,
okay. All right, we got down to the end. And now I urge you, brothers, by the Lord Yeshua, the Messiah, and by the love of the Spirit, to join me in my struggle by praying to God on my behalf, that I will be rescued from the unbelievers in Judah, and that my service for Jerusalem will be acceptable to God's people there. So simply asking for prayer. He's asking, to continue to pray. He was in danger often. He was, struggling. The Jews, and it even says that I will be rescued from the unbelievers in Judah. And so, Judah is a direct reference to the land proper. The land proper.
And it's those Jews, the unbelieving Jews in Judah that he's talking about. So he expects opposition.
Right.
And like we said, the reason why is because he's befriending Gentiles.
That's right.
And at the bottom of this page, he said the Zealots hated all Gentiles because in their minds, they represented Rome, the oppressors of the Jews. And we can't forget that when Jesus came, they thought, when they crowned him king, so to speak, when he came through and they were laying down their coats and their palm branches, they were expecting a king who was going to defeat Rome, and he didn't come to do that. And they were disappointed. So
that's right. I'm making notes in my Bible so I can argue with people when we get to that verse. Okay, chapter 16. I gotta quit. I gotta go find another church again. I gotta keep getting kicked out and have to move around. Yeah. Okay. At first, if you first look at chapter, I know. If you first look at 16, it's a bunch of names, and it's him with his salutations and everything, and his doxology. But I counted it up, and I think he mentioned 17 different men, if I counted right, and then 9 different women. And I mentioned to Stephanie before we jumped on, if women are just supposed to be quiet and sit in the back and sit down and shut up, he's mentioning 9 different women that are working to help. And I'm
Yeah.
like, these ladies aren't being quiet and sitting in the back row.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And he says here,
I have it highlighted.
go ahead, read it.
For one thing, we get a glimpse of the important role that women played in the Messianic movement in Paul's day. Even more, we must understand that the majority of these women are Jewish women serving in Jewish synagogues because so-called Christianity was still mostly a sect of Judaism and would require so until well after Paul was martyred. So several years. And it said that the case is he's mostly dealing with the diaspora. Those are the scattered Jews, not so much in the Holy Land where the tradition. Okay, what it's talking about, it says, it's fascinating that in an age when male dominance was universal and unquestioned, that women played such an important role in the movement of Yeshua started. However, no doubt this was the case mostly in the diaspora. The women played a bigger role. It is a fascinating, male dominance was universal. So the if I'm reading this correctly, Stephanie, the male dominance was more in the diaspora than in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land, where tradition and the ancients were carefully guarded by the zealots. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, I think that's what he's alluding to. But he does say it was universal and unquestioned that women, it was unusual because we know that even in Rome, women had no voice.
Right.
Their husbands could do whatever they wanted, and women couldn't say a word about it.
But I do believe Jews were different because women could inherit land. Women could.
Yes. And women were, if they didn't want to marry the man, they didn't have to. They could get out of it.
So even though in Rome, it was probably the Roman rule probably had women under the thumb a little bit more. In the Holy Land, women had a little bit more rights within the Jewish community.
Yeah. And even we know, you're right. And I think you make a really good point because even in Greece, it was a patriarchal system. Not that the Jewish people didn't have that system, but there were requirements that God, and this is why God gave the Torah.
Yeah.
Because there were instructions on how to treat people.
Yeah.
And how if a woman lost her husband without an heir, and if a woman lost all that she had, if she was a widow, it was the men who were supposed to take care of these women and these orphan children. They were not to just let them be orphaned and fall on hard times. They were to help. So other communities, other nations didn't have such instructions. So they were left to function on their own with very little and not even a voice and not even capable of making any money to provide for themselves. So God put in those things in place to keep those things from happening. And that's exactly what Paul was sharing. Like, here's how you take care of the women and children. Look at me. I give women this voice. You can give women a voice, And so I think that's part of what he's showing in the way he models it.
Okay. So what did you find? What did you like about chapter 16? I don't know that we want to go verse by verse, do we?
No, but this, he talks about the holy kiss and he believes that he goes, like this wasn't a romantic kiss. And he talked about how some Christians take this, but it was like a kiss on both cheeks.
Yeah.
And it was a welcome that was normal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a normal greeting. So
So he called it a holy kiss. Yeah. But some things that he does, he introduces Phoebe.
Yeah.
And I like what he says about Phoebe because he goes, she had an important job. They call her a shamash.
I thought that was cool.
She was the shamash of the congregation. In Judaism, this meant that she held an official office of some sort in her synagogue. She was someone who had duties and the authority to carry out tasks that could range from caring for the building to serving as president over the synagogue. So
So
she was to be respected.
2 verses are given to Phoebe. He's got 2, but also the Shamash is the center.
Yes.
This is the
servant.
Shamash. It's called the servant. This is the servant, and this is the one that you take to light the other candles, and the source of
the flame.
the source of light. I mean, Yeshua is the Shemesh. So it's a little like to be referred to as that.
Yeah.
I think that a little bit of extra, a little bit of extra meaning that this is an important role. This is the most important role for this. And so she's being related to that in the church.
And they're even telling her, give her whatever assistance she may need from you.
Yeah.
And more than likely, she was the one delivering the letter.
Probably.
And she was the one explaining the letter. Because she would have been in on this whole discussion, because as we'll see, he was the dictator. He dictated, meaning he dictated the letter.
He spoke it.
Yes, and he had a scribe.
Right.
So the scribe is mentioned in the last part of this chapter, 16.
The scribe is mentioned in 22, verse 22, 16:22.
So we know, because the scribe tells us that he was scribing. But so there was a group of people, which we actually learned from another book, Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes, that it wasn't just Paul sitting at a desk writing this letter. Right. He had probably other people coming in. As he was dictating, they were discussing, how do we correct this? How do we want to say this?
Right.
Not that he didn't know, because he was a very learned man.
Right.
But he did have a group of people that assisted him.
Yep, that's true. Okay, we have about 10 minutes or so, a little bit more than 10 minutes. How do you want to handle it? Do you want to just go through a couple of names?
Yeah.
Okay. If you look at, he also says Priscilla and Aquila. We've met them before. And so again, they were probably Jews. They had probably moved from Asia area to this area. So they're definitely fellow workers in Christ. So we've seen them in Acts, and so we see them again here.
Yeah, and they probably would have moved out when Claudius made everybody move out of Rome,
right?
All the Jews.
Well, I think
they would probably move back in.
It's a note down here for a few people. A few people have that same note about her, Claudius. Okay, and then he also, in number 5, he says, greet Epaenetus. It's my beloved, who is the first convert to Christ from Asia. And our commentary just kind of makes the note that, that may have been one of the first converts of the Roman Church. Doesn't say absolutely there's evidence of it, but
at least that providence of Asia. Well,
so for Paul to make that note, it is going to be somebody important.
And I do like what he writes. He said, when we talk about what's the word for church in Greek?
Ecclesia.
Ecclesia.
Yeah.
Is it wrong?
Ecclesia.
Ecclesia, he said, is the Greek word found in the New Testament, and it is a general word that means gathering or assembling.
Right.
Because when you go to the Septuagint and you look up that word, it was used to talk about Israel gathering at Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
There was an ecclesia that was there at Mount Sinai. So if you actually think that it only means church, then there was a church back on Mount Sinai.
Right. Okay? It's just a gathering.
But it was an assembly there. And so it says, when the New Testament refers to ecclesia, most often it means a gathering of believers. The word church did not exist.
Right. Well, and actually, Tinsdale, if you look at the Tinsdale Bible, he didn't use the word church when he translated everything. It was added afterwards.
Yeah.
Even
those Greeks,
even Tinsdale called it an assembly. It's an assembly.
Yeah, and the same thing with the 7 assemblies in Revelation.
Yes.
They were assemblies.
Yes.
They weren't really considered churches.
Yes.
So
exactly. Okay. What else does he say? Greet Andronicus and Junius, my kinsmen. And he uses that word more of a countrymen. It's more people from my country, so probably Jews.
And Mary was a person that Paul
Mary.
heard was a faithful servant to her congregation.
And Junius was a female as well. So that's another female. I actually looked up every one of these names to find out if they were feminine nouns or masculine nouns to different, because that one you could read over really quick, and if you didn't know it was a feminine noun, that could have easily been another man. You know?
Yeah, but the King James version actually made it a male name because to cover up that she was an apostle.
Interesting. Yeah. So it says, my fellow prisoners who are outstanding among the apostles. So that's where you get that reference, who are also in Christ before me, which means they were believers before Paul. Paul was. So we are up to 4 women now. At this stage, 4 women have already been identified.
And then the 2 slave names.
I know. I saw that. That's in verse 9. Urbanus and Sychus is a common slave name. Those are common slaves. So probably could be more than likely Gentiles, or at the very least, Roman slaves.
Oh, and then they believe that Aristobulus?
Yeah.
Would have been the grandson of Herod the Great.
I know. So that name, it does show up in other historical documents. And Herod the Great had a grandson of that name. And the next name, Herodian, is possibly another member of the Herod the Great family. So,
he says, unlikely as it might seem, some members of the Herod dynasty actually came to belief in Messiah.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Who knew? Did you ever read this? Did you ever know all these names?
I know. We've got verse 12, 2 women in that one.
They thought they may have been twins.
I think because their names are very similar. So Trophiena and I wrote over it's like a Tryphosa. Trophiena and Tryphosa. I tried to look up their words. I couldn't get what the names meant, because I know sometimes in Hebrew you get in meaning. But he just made the comment that they were probably women. And then it says, greet Persis, the beloved who has worked hard in the Lord, another woman. That's another feminine name. And then we've got a couple more. He kind of goes through a Synchris, Phlegon, Hermes, and we've got 2 Hermes in there, which is a Greek, and I think one is the name for Mercury. So those are both Roman names. That would be a Roman Roman name. And then we've got in verse 15, I've got 2. I've got Philologus and Junia, Nereus and his sister. So I've got Julia and then Nereus's sister, who is not named, but we've got that's 8 and 9. And then in Olympus and all the saints who are with them. And there was a comment on that one too, that could possibly be another church in Rome, because they're saying all the saints, all the congregation, all the assembly, all those who gathered with him, with them. So that could be a reference to another church.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to take over?
Where he talks about the Holy Kiss. He just said it's a display of fellowship that was known to have become traditional within the early Messianic community.
Right.
So that's why he brings that up. And then if you want to, do you want to read 16 through, are we reading any of this?
Yeah. No, not unless you want to, because there is a shift here. He kind of stops with a lot of the names and he kind of gives more direction.
Then he gets into false teaching. So in 17 and 19 and I think even 20, he's watching, he's warning them about watch out for those who cause divisions. Now here he's actually talking about believers that cause division. And he's like, keep away from them. And I think this is good for all of us. When you start seeing people like, I remember being in a school with my kids. It was a co-op and there was a disagreement on a place they took the kids. And that's just a little of the background story. So because there were several mothers who were very angry about where they had taken the kids on this field trip, it was something that happened that they never expect. The people who planned it never expected what happened. and it wasn't immoral or terrible. It was inappropriate for kids.
Yeah.
And it wasn't their fault. It was based on what the restaurant had hanging up on their walls, and they had a lot of soft porn. And
Mm.
so a lot of the mothers were mad that their kids went to such a place.
Yeah.
And so there was immediate division, and I started getting phone calls like, I'm taking my kids out, I think you should take your kids out, and here's where we're going if you
Yeah.
want to go there with us. So they were trying to stir things up and get mothers to pull their kids from this
Mhm.
co-op.
Mhm.
And it was a shame. It was a shame, and I didn't give in to that. I just, I didn't like join. I
Sure.
didn't join, and I actually went back to the woman who had planned it, and she goes, "Are you leaving too?" And I said, "No, I'm not leaving." I said, "I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that this was something you had no idea
Mhm.
was going on." And she goes, "I
Mhm.
didn't. I had no idea."
Mhm.
And so, and so I think we need that's a good example of people trying to cause division,
Mhm.
and it happens all the time
It
in
does.
church. We had a family when we had our own congregation. One woman pulled three other families out with her when she got mad and left.
Wow.
So these things happen. Don't
Mhm.
be part of it, is what he's
Mhm.
saying. Stay
Yeah.
away from that because it's
Yeah.
been happening for 2,000 years.
It has. It has. Hey, I want to back up one. I want to go look at 13 because he mentions Rufus, and we jumped over that really quick. There is
Oh,
another Rufus in the Bible that is mentioned in Mark 15:21. Rufus is identified, or a Rufus is identified as the father of Simeon, of Cyrene, who carried Jesus's cross.
oh,
So I don't know if it's the same person, but
right.
there's a Rufus
Yeah.
content, and
Wow.
so it indicates that perhaps
Mhm.
after carrying the cross of Christ, his dad became a believer, and
Yeah,
the news
definitely.
spread. So that's
Yeah,
kind
and I
of
think that you said he was from Cyrus?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that would kind
Yeah.
of make that's the same area. That would
Yeah.
make sense.
And then
Okay, what
in
else?
1620,
Yeah.
it just says, "And God, the source of shalom, will soon crush the adversary under your feet. The
Yep.
grace of our Lord Yeshua be with you."
Yeah.
And the way he describes this is kind of the autograph of Paul.
Oh.
It was customary for the sender of a letter, when the laborious task of actually writing the text is, think about that. This is 16 chapters for
Yeah.
us. It's a lot to go through, and they wrote it all out. I mean, obviously, you had a scribe, but they wrote all of this by hand. So it's writing the text had been fulfilled by someone else to add a concluding greeting in his own hand. So
Oh,
he may
that's
have
nice.
actually taken over the pen and said, "I'm going to write this myself," and he
Yeah.
would have signed it. So they knew that that was his little message to them,
Mm-hmm.
and it served to authenticate the letter.
Yeah. We've got Timothy is mentioned. We know who that is. Lucius, Jason, and Sophistipator, my kinsman. And kinsman, he uses a little different word here, not just somebody from his countrymen, but probably Jews as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not necessarily a relationship, but a Jew. So it would have been a similar
Yeah.
one.
And an interesting thing about the Timothy, why Paul had him be circumcised, why Paul himself circumcised him,
Mhm.
was because he was teaching other Jews.
Yeah.
And that was important that they know that he was circumcised, because it was very, very important. And we can't stress that enough. It was very important to the Pharisees, to the scribes, to the
Mhm.
sages, everyone, the priests, everyone in authority. It was important because you were unclean, you were Gentile or
Mhm.
pagan if you weren't
Mhm.
circumcised. So
Mhm.
if he was taking letters back and forth and teaching other Jews, then it was important that Paul circumcise him so he would
That's
be
right.
considered clean.
That's right. Okay, and then our author, or the scribe rather, is identified,
Mm-hmm.
and that is Tertius.
Yeah.
And he's like, who wrote this letter and greets you in the Lord. Gaius is the host to me, and the whole church greets you.
That's Paul saying that.
Erastus, the city treasurer, greets you, and Quartus, the brother. And
Yeah,
then
the
we've got
city treasure in Corinth. So that may have been where Paul was staying when he wrote Rome, right? He was in Corinth
okay,
when he wrote Romans. I'm sorry.
Corinth's treasurer. I'm
But
making
he's
notes.
hosting, right? Was he
Yeah.
my host? So he's staying with this man who is the city treasurer of Corinth. So that means he's writing this letter from Corinth.
From Corinth. Okay. Okay, and then it's got now him who is able to establish you according to my gospel, preaching the preaching of Jesus Christ according to the revelation of the mystery, which has been kept secret for long past ages. I'm reading from the NASB. I'm not reading from the book.
Okay.
Now is manifestation and by the scriptures of the prophets according to the commandments, and the eternal God has made known to all the nations, leading to obedience of faith to the only wise God through Jesus Christ, to the glory be the glory forever and amen.
That's the doxology he ends with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Anything else you want to say? Is there any other additional note about the doxology?
No, he just he ends with 1 Corinthians 1:22. I just thought it was interesting that that the author ends with this verse in Corinthians. Precisely because Jews ask for signs and Greeks try to find wisdom, we go on proclaiming a Messiah executed on a stake as a criminal. To Jews, this is an obstacle, and to Greeks, it is nonsense. But to all those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, the same Messiah is God's power and God's wisdom. For God's nonsense is wiser than humanity's wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than humanity's strength.
Isn't that good?
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. I'm going to close my book. Look, watch. We did it.
Look at the time.
15 seconds to spare.
Yes, we are at the end of our hour, just about. I know.
All right. Go get this book, though. Honestly, this is definitely a book that should be on your shelves. It's a fabulous resource.
Go get it and study Romans for yourself.
I don't think there's much in here I disagreed with him.
Yeah.
I think he was very enlightening.
Maybe 1%.
Not even. I don't even think it was that much. So it was really, really well written, well done. I wish he would write more. He's got a lot of PDFs and he's got a lot of videos to watch. He definitely is a teacher with his videos. So, and you can get transcripts, but that's always hard. It's always hard to
we need to sign out.
That's right. All right. So thank you. We're running late. We're going to say goodbye. Thank you. And we'll see you next week with our guest. So thanks for joining us. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
If you missed today's show and want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lamnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all of the other live Lamb show archives on the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the lamnetwork.tv website. I'm Stephanie Pavlantos, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.